Panthers forward Mackie Samoskevich has been sent down to the AHL. Is this the right move? And what have we learned about this Panthers team through the first 3 games of the season?
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, October 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to our team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You can get that all on the Game Time app. So the Florida Panthers, an off day today for them. They'll be returning to practice on Wednesday at 11 a.m. From Amerant Bank Arena a day before their home opener, a very highly anticipated home opener. Also, congratulations to the fan base once again for selling out the entirety of the lower bowl for season tickets, the territory memberships, and can't wait to hear the sound system as well and the new goal song that the Florida Panthers will have coming into this season. But it is a Wednesday, so it is a Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Jacob Winans is back here on the show. Jacob, welcome back to a regular season edition of the show.
Oh man, it's good to be back, and it's good to have hockey back. I cannot wait for this home opener. It's highly anticipated. Honestly, it's becoming a pretty big rivalry between Florida and Toronto. There's been a lot of talk back and forth. We've heard some chirps from Ryan Reeves about what would and would not happen if he were in the lineup for Toronto. And there's some guys on that team that weren't on the Leafs last year that have it out for the Panthers, Tyler Bertuzzi being one of them. So I'm excited to see how this goes. There's going to be a revealing of the Eastern Conference Championship banner. It should be a pretty special night. And I'm excited to see how the Panthers come out in that environment. It should be probably the craziest home opener many of these guys have ever had in a Panthers uniform.
Yep. We'll preview more of the game in segment number 3. But programming note, by the way, for everybody, is there won't be a show on Thursday, as Wednesday night will be a travel day for me, as I will be heading down to South Florida for the home opener for the Florida Panthers against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we will be previewing that on today's show. But before we get into everything that, as far as transactions and all that, Sasha Barkov once again is continuing his partnership with Joe DiMaggio's Children's Hospital, and will donate $1,600 for every goal and $800 for every assist. And so far, he has donated $313,600 since starting this in 2019. So big congratulations to the captain. As far as transactions and all, Mackie Samoskevich has been sent down to the AHL, played the first 2 games, was a scratch in game 3, and then Justin Sordoff making his NHL debut against the New Jersey Devils. William Lockwood has been recalled. And Jacob, truth is, and I don't think this was out of the blue. I think this was just basically planned all along before the Panthers even hit the ice last Thursday against the Minnesota Wild. And I think the plan was just to get these guys a little bit of a taste in the NHL, because I think Paul Maurice would even say that if you were to play one guy on one line one night, scratch him, put the other prospect in and have the other one scratch and watching from the press box, and all this back and forth flip-flopping, it is a big disservice to their development and all. And one of these guys had to be sent down. whether it's Sordiv or Samoskevich, whether one should have gone over the other, that's neither here nor there. But what's gonna matter is that both of these guys are gonna get some ice time at the same time, but on different teams. With Mackie Samoskevich going to the Checkers, and he's gonna play top minutes, get more ice time in with the Checkers. So this is a big chance for Mackie Samoskevich to get some confidence, and it's not a goodbye, it's a see you later for Mackie. And so far so good through the first two games, especially in game one. I thought, like Nick and I spoke about, how it felt like that he belonged in the show. Not the best performance in game two. I mean, the whole team basically not the best performance, as the Panthers basically struggled in breakouts and the neutral zone and all that, which they took care of on Monday. But what are your thoughts about Mackie Samoskevich being sent down to AHL Charlotte?
Yeah, for me, I think it's a smart decision developmentally. I think Mackie, he was given an opportunity to start the season with the big team after he earned it. He had a great training camp. You give him a shot with the big guys and see what he can do. Essentially, give him an opportunity to prove that he can't be sent down. Which it didn't work out that way. He didn't light the world on fire offensively or anything, which is perfectly fine. That wasn't the expectation. You just wanted to give him a taste. Let him he makes it the team out of training camp, which is a big feather in the cap to get his career started. I think he heads to the AHL with a ton of confidence. After, honestly, that Minnesota game, he was in stretches the best forward the Panthers had in that game. Had a fantastic chance, almost went bar down for his first NHL goal. It's definitely not his last stint with the Panthers this season.
No doubt.
He's got a very, very bright future ahead. I would not be shocked to see him back in the NHL sometime in the near future. Definitely again this season. But for me, I think when it came down to it, having to choose between him and Justin Sordiv, who to send down to the AHL, I think Mackie is a guy who needs the top 6 minutes more than Justin Sordiv does. Because Justin Sordiv's NHL role is not going to be in the top 6. Correct. as a scoring winger. That's what Mackie is here to be. And you want to give him those reps at the AHL level. And for Sordiv, it's perfectly fine for his development to be in the NHL playing middle 6 minutes or bottom 6 minutes, because at the end of the day, he's likely to stick in the NHL as a third line winger or center, or a fourth line winger or center, and a penalty killer and things like that, which is something he's going to be given a chance to do while he's here. And also, no slight at all to Lockwood getting the call up in Mackie's place. He had a fantastic camp himself. He's reliable. He does the dirty work. He's a grinder, and that's kind of what we're looking for on the fourth line. And you don't want to stick Mackie in that role because that's not his game. So let him go play 20 minutes a night in Charlotte. It'll be good for his development. Power play 1. He'll play top line. He'll definitely get the power play time. He'll get to drive play. I think that's going to be great for his development, and we'll see him back here because he's got the skill. He proved it. He's a very, very talented player, and I think he's ahead of where I expected him to be development wise.
Yeah, and it's not a knock on Sordiv when you said that the role of him is going to be basically a role player and all that, and if that's what you get for a later round pick that's outside of the first round, then you're banking pretty good on that pick if you're Bill Zito either way, and his experience with in the Western Hockey League as well, and then getting a year in Charlotte as well. Let's also not forget that Mackie's only played 7 games in the AHL last year before the Calder Cup playoffs and all. Justin Sordiv has also had a full year of knowing what it's like to be with not necessarily the big club, but also just the foundation of knowing the Florida Panther way. But with just checking Cap Friendly prior to this recording and all, the Jona Djokovic signing is still pending via Cap Friendly, and the William Lockwood transaction, as far as him being called up, has not gone through on Cap Friendly. So it'll be 23 players on the roster. So that means there's a chance that Sam Bennett might not be ready for opening night. But who knows what will happen tomorrow when the Florida Panthers return to practice at 11 a.m. at Amerant Bank Arena. we could very well see a transaction saying Justin sort of has been sent down to AHL Charlotte, and that answers our question of Sam Bennett being ready. So that's another thing as far as that. So guys, be on the lookout for that. If one way or the other, whether he's on the ice because he did not make the trip, and we will get all of our questions answered as far as what the practice is going to look like tomorrow. And check out some YouTube shorts on Thursday, especially for some pregame roster updates. Even though there won't be a full episode dedicated to previewing the Toronto Maple Leafs after today's show. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about what we've learned through the first 3 games and what kind of foundational habits have the Florida Panthers shown throughout these first 3 games that gives us the confidence that the Florida Panthers can continue this into game number 4 of the season. We're going to talk about this and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. And passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. And you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, theater, and events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to start the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute tickets. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Game Time picks the seat for an average of 18% savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONAHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Segment number 2 here on this Wednesday, October 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show. Jacob Winans is here. And Jacob, as far as first 3 games for the Panthers, obviously we spoke a lot on game 1 about how the Panthers gave themselves every chance to win. Sometimes the bounces don't go your way for this team, and then we saw how the Florida Panthers really exploded early on Monday against the New Jersey Devils. But when you think about a team that is transitioning, bringing in new players, getting used to a new system, even though someone like Kulikov has already been in it before, and pieces coming back for the team, what are things that you've learned throughout the first 3 games, and what are some foundational habits that you've seen out of this Panthers team that gives you the confidence that they can continue to get through and possibly get over, obviously, the big hump of what is the injuries to the blue line?
Yeah, I mean, it's what I've kind of learned in the first 3 games, number one, is that this is a work in progress. And we have to, I think we all in general have to settle down with a little bit of the expectations from this blue line. I think they're holding it together. They're doing what they can. But there are going to be some breakdowns here and there because there's so many new faces, and then also it's guys who are playing much bigger roles than they have been played recently in their careers, or much bigger roles than they're best suited for. I guess would be the best way to put that. There are guys who are depth defensemen or third pair defensemen who are going to be playing second pair minutes for a good amount of time, 20 minutes a game, that kind of thing. Which that's what we're going to have to sign up for the first few weeks or a couple months or whatever it ends up being with Montour and Ekblad. And that's perfectly fine, because what I have learned is that the Panthers have shown they can win that way. There are guys who are stepping up offensively. Even in a bad game in Winnipeg, the offense finally started to come alive and click, and that carried right over into New Jersey. And I think the Panthers are going to be able to outscore some of their problems. I think goaltending it was rough in the game against Winnipeg, but goaltending in general hasn't been it hasn't been terrible to start the season. I think Bob can definitely do a lot better, a lot more consistency, but he played a great game in New Jersey. The closing out of games, obviously we don't really like what we saw in the third period against New Jersey, but that was also against New Jersey. That's an elite offense. That's a Stanley Cup favorite over there. So it's not like that was against a slouch of a team. That's a team that can turn it on when they feel like it. But I'm encouraged by the offense. I think there are great habits being built offensively right now. I think Evan Rodriguez has been spectacular, stepping in. A 4-point game in Winnipeg, comes back with a couple more points in New Jersey. I think he's been fantastic. And really looking at the record right now, it should be 2-1. Minnesota, they thoroughly outplayed the Wild that whole game. That's a playoff team up there. They outplayed them beginning to end, didn't get the bounces. It is what it is. Winnipeg, they kind of laid an egg in that game, but they did fight back. I'm encouraged by the fight. And then New Jersey, that's a great team that they knocked off in Jersey on the road. So I'm encouraged by the habits offensively, and I think we have to temper expectations a little bit on defense, because we're not whole right now, and there's a lot of new faces transitioning into the system and playing bigger roles. But overall, I'm very encouraged by the start to the season, because the scoring touch is there, the effort is there. We'll have to weather some defensive breakdowns here and there, but guys are for the most part doing their jobs, and eventually the bounces tend to go your way if you continue to have those good habits. So you play every game like you did in Minnesota, you're going to win a lot of hockey games.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head when it comes to defensemen playing a whole bunch of minutes. I mean, the pair of OEL and Forsling. OEL's averaging 26 minutes a night through the first 3 games. Forsling is 24. And then the next closest one is Dmitry Kulikov at 18. So that's a 6-minute difference. Yeah, power play time have a lot to do with it, with OEL and Forsling being on power play 1 and then Forsling on power play 2. But also, you're asking a lot of your top pair guys as well. And yes, that's going to be a good thing when Ekblad and Montour comes back, because they're not shouldering, those two guys won't be shouldering a load as much. Also, the power play percentage doesn't look the best right now for the Panthers, but man, can we see that puck moving at times?
Yeah.
And let's also not forget, some of the power play goals were without Tkachuk on them. Why? Because of those offsetting minors and some offsetting majors over the last 2 games as well. So the Panthers have gotten some of their power play goals even without Chucky, and Chucky also as well. I believe he's leading the team in shots. Yes, he's leading the team in shots through the first 3 games by with 16. Evan Rodriguez is the next closest with 13. Rhino at 11. So we're seeing some of the guys that we expected to step up as well, and taking a bigger role. And also, yeah, like we said, entries have been breakouts were a problem, especially on Saturday. But man, the Panthers able to clean those up on Monday as well. And we haven't seen too much of Bobrovsky giving up that facepalm type of goal. I mean, maybe on the shorthanded goal by Appleton that just squeaks through. Maybe you're just like, ugh. But we haven't seen an outrage on Sergei Bobrovsky neither. I mean, let's also not forget as well uh, about how out of sorts New Jersey was as well with. And I didn't even mention this on yesterday's show. Timo Meier getting benched for the third period as well. That's another one. John Marino and Curtis Lazar. Those three were benched. The Panthers were having all those three guys in just bad positions. Timo Meier had 2 penalties in a 5-minute span as well. The Panthers, big bodies, they can move. They draw penalties. They are fast. And they are gonna catch a lot of guys out of position, and that is showing. The Panthers, I'm not saying they'll lead the league in power play percentage, but there's a chance that they could lead the league in going on the power play. There's a chance because of what they can do with their speed.
I would agree with that. The Panthers, it's been a strength the past couple of years, but this year it looks like they've become really adept at drawing penalties, and the Panthers have so much skill to put out there on that power play. Eventually, it's going to start to add up, and we say this every year, but we've yet to see the best of Barkov. And when he turns it on, this team really could be unstoppable offensively. And not to say he's played poorly at all. He's over a point per game right now. But he's yet to really dominate a game offensively. He's yet to really shoot the puck as often as he could. And that takes time, especially we know this. We're deep into his career now. We know he tends to warm up a little bit slowly, especially this year, not getting as much preseason time. But we haven't seen that from Reinhart this season, which is great. And Matthew Tkachuk, we haven't seen him come out on fire offensively, which the Panthers are playing great on offense, and that's without your 2 best players really, really dominating offensively. So that's encouraging. But like you said, Forsling, Ekman-Larsson have played a ton of minutes. I'm honestly, I'm kind of salivating at the thought of a top 4 right now of Forsling, Montour, Ekman-Larsson, Ekblad, or some combination of that Forsling, Ekblad, OEL, Montour, because they really did most of their damage last year with Ekblad, Forsling, and then Montour paired with Mark Stahl. Ekman-Larsson is a massive upgrade over Mark Stahl, and that's going to pay dividends when everybody's back healthy. So we just have to sit tight and continue sort of riding this wave. But when we get some bodies back in there, this could really be a machine offensively and then defensively. And keep in mind, we haven't seen Sam Bennett yet either. So there's a lot of firepower on the way. I'm encouraged with what they've shown so far, and I think it can get a lot better.
Yeah, and even with Kulikov, not having the best 3 games. Been to the penalty box quite a few times as well. For the Panthers, and what a surprise that Juvis Belinskis has been in as a guy who jumps in up on the rush as well, and just the guy from Latvia has just continued to impress, even though he is averaging. Let me look it up real quick. He's averaging 12 minutes a game and doing so much even in his short amount of ice time. So really like what I've seen out of Juvis Belinskis for sure. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to preview the Florida Panthers home opener against the Toronto Maple Leafs as they welcome their Atlantic Division rivals to FLA Live Arena. Excuse me, Amerant Bank Arena. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. And Alexander Barkov scores a hat trick. The Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup. And if you want to win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. There are all possible scenarios for this season. But to have a chance at winning big, you need to play daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper as the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On AHL Network. Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contests. With studs like Connor McDavid, who had a beautiful goal on Tuesday night against Nashville. go see that replay if you haven't. Alexander Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, Cale Makar, Alexander Barkov, Matthew Tkachuk. All you need to do is pick more or less on stats for these stars. Choose stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. You heard me, Panther fans. 100 times the payout on Sleeper. So start paying attention and get your picks right so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Segment number 3 here on this Wednesday, October 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show. Jacob Winans is here as we preview the Florida Panthers matchup against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, Jacob, the Florida Panthers welcome their Atlantic Division rival to Amerant Bank Arena. Said the wrong name as we transition to segment number 3. Gonna hopefully we don't make that a habit, but the story, if you lived under a rock when it came to the Toronto Maple Leafs, even the Too Many Men podcast have a segment called what in relation to the Leafs, how does this affect the Leafs always? But Austin Matthews getting off to an incredible start with 2 straight hat tricks. Majority of the goals have come below the hashes. Even a beautiful sharp angle shot on the power play against the Minnesota Wild the other night. And just it's him and the William Nylander show. William Nylander looked to have started on the third line center, but now according to Daily Faceoff and what we've seen in the first few games, he's now back on the wing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And one thing that if you're a Panthers fan and looking at this, is 5-on-5 goal differential is not the best through three games for the Toronto Maple Leafs. -3. Where the Florida Panthers are, they're -1. So that's a little bit of something to keep an eye out. Power play, we expect the Leafs to be lethal on that. They're 40% through 3 games. And yes, let's also put in consideration that numbers can be skewed early on into the season. But a few things that I have when it comes to this game, as far as the Leafs, of what I think the Panthers need to do to win, is take away their space. Take away their time and space is one. Keep this game at 5-on-5. Easier said than done, obviously, because this is a really fast team, and Mitch Marner has had quite a few shorthanded chances too. So let's also not underestimate the Leafs penalty kill. Continue a strong forecheck, because some of the goals that they gave up in the first few games have been on the forecheck. I mean, they had to come back against Montreal in game number 1 of the season, and try to catch them in transition. That's something that Chicago did more than once. That resulted in goals on Monday night, where Chicago's not necessarily a doormat. I don't think they're a playoff team, but I don't think they're a doormat, Jacob. As far as a team that's going to be beaten around as much as people say they are. But as far as this matchup, what are your keys as far as what the Panthers need to do to come out with a win on their home opener, which is going to be a big one? We mentioned Eastern Conference banner, new goal song, and all. So, what are your keys?
Yeah, there's a few. The popular quote over the offseason from Mitch Marner was that their offseason additions added a lot of, quote, piss and vinegar. So you're talking about Tyler Bertuzzi, you're talking about Ryan Reeves, you're talking about Max Domi, a lot of guys that the Panthers have long histories with, guys that 2 of those guys have played in the division with the Panthers and have kind of been a thorn in the Panthers side at times. Discipline is going to be huge because it's going to be a hotly contested game. There's going to be a lot of post whistle activity. There's going to be a lot of chirping and a lot of big hits thrown and guys taking runs at guys. That's the nature of this. It's going to be a playoff atmosphere. So discipline is huge, because you cannot get involved in a post whistle scrum and end up with an extra 2 minutes or taking a cheap roughing penalty. A team like Toronto, if you take a penalty to prevent a goal, something like that, I can live with that. But if you take undisciplined penalties after the whistle or stupid stick infractions, things like that, it's almost giving Toronto goals because their power play is so lethal. You cannot give them those opportunities. So I really would like to see power plays limited to under 3. Keep Toronto at even strength. You can beat them at 5-on-5. Their defense is not as physical. Their defense is not as fast. Their defense is very offensive oriented, with guys like Riley and Klingberg and some of those types. TJ Brody has not had a strong start to the season. So those are guys that you can really expose if you can keep them at 5-on-5. So staying out of the box is the number one key. There's no greater importance in this game than staying out of the penalty box and not getting caught up in the extracurriculars, because Toronto will try to start some of that. That's the identity that they're trying to transition to right now. So that's big. Another key is get a lot of shots on goal. Ilya Samsonov, I would assume, is the starter. He has not looked good to start the season, not at all. I believe he gave up 5 in Montreal on 22 shots or something like that. It was just a poor opening to the season for him. The goaltending wasn't good against Chicago. Shoot everything. Test a goalie who's not looking super sharp to start the season. And it's a guy, Ilya Samsonov, who the Panthers have really had his number past couple of years, have beaten him in the playoffs two seasons in a row. Take advantage of that. There's definitely a mental aspect to it, and taking advantage of a guy who's just trying to get his feet under him to start the season, after having his playoffs cut short by an injury. I think there's a lot to that. Just get shots on goal. You never know what's going to happen. And then the last one, and I'm just going to piggyback off of one of your keys, is catch them in transition. Their defense in particular has had a few lapses, a few wonky line changes, things like that. The Panthers are going to have to capitalize on those chances, and if you can catch someone with a breakout pass, we've seen it work. We saw Corey Perry score a breakaway goal in Toronto and hit the point celly. And so those kind of opportunities, that's how you beat a team that has a lot of offensive firepower. I think it'll be a somewhat high scoring game, but the lower the score can be, the better the Panthers' chances are, because Toronto's not a grinded out team. That's a team that wants to score a lot of goals and run you out of the building offensively. So if you can stay out of the box, make it a 5-on-5 game, I think you've got the advantage.
And Toronto is second in the league in shots per game, and they give up the 17th least amount of shots. So that just goes to show how bad the start has been for Ilya Samsonov when you're talking about giving up 9 goals in 2 games, 4.42 GAA, 839 save percentage. Once again, these numbers are skewed to start the season. So I'm not expecting it to be at that number. Even if he gives up a few goals to the Panthers on Thursday night and all. So just a little bit of an idea of where the Toronto Maple Leafs are as far as retrieving pucks as well, getting in transition in as far as zone entries as well. Second, puck retrievals in their offensive zone. That's another thing that the Panthers really need to really hone in on when it comes to that, because, man, this is maybe a last ride for their big 4. Of course, we know the situation with William Nylander's contract. Will they keep him? Will they not? So they got to make sure that they keep those guys in check. And of course, the new guys that bring bring a little bit of sandpaper as well, that are just pests when it comes to it. And even a fourth line guy like Ryan Reeves, that they're gonna get in your face, and maybe brought a little bit of toughness this offseason into the mix for Toronto. So it's going to be a fun one. And we will have a post-game edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast with Nick Fairbanks on Thursday night going into Friday morning. And really can't wait to be at the home opener and to just enjoy it, and the Eastern Conference, raising of the Eastern Conference banner at Amerant Bank Arena. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this another Winans Wednesday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8. Cannot wait to get this thing going at home. Enjoy it. Enjoy the game. Everyone who's going, be loud, and make it an insane playoff environment. we love to see it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, my friend. And I will see you next Wednesday as we will break down the game against the San Jose Sharks.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. Thanks.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On AHL network, including Locked On AHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stuart Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.